Dear Margareta, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Brazilian government is honored to participate in the third session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. This is a timely and important gathering given the increase in frequency and impact of disasters on livelihoods, communities and nations in the past years. We commend the efforts of the International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction in conveying such a meaningful meeting. Brazil presents its condolences to the governments and peoples who have suffered from the impacts of disasters. My government also acknowledges the solidarity shown by the international community in the aftermath of the floods and landslides that hit the state of Rio de Janeiro earlier this year. The proper relief and recovery efforts have been provided in a concerted action among the federal, state, and municipality levels. Ladies and gentlemen, disaster risk management and disaster resilience are cross-sectional issues which have strong links with development. We cannot speak about the impact about disasters from a strictly technological point of view, and neither can we do it only from a climate change perspective. Disaster risk management and disaster resilience includes these approaches, but this debate can better be addressed from a sustainable development in a participatory way in its social, economic, and environmental perspectives. Thus, food security, poverty reduction, education, infrastructure, climate change adaptation and mitigation, risk monitoring in land and sea, early warning systems, land occupation, sanitation, ability to respond, capacity to rebuild, participation of affected communities, investments, risk financing, and legislation improvements are all important aspects which must be taken into consideration if we want to be more resilient to disasters and let them not be a hindrance to development. Brazil has taken more and more significant steps in order to prevent and better respond to disasters, as well as to build back better. Many of these measures proceed from the Hyogo Framework for Action 2005-2015. Since 1990s, a national policy of civil defense has been the cornerstone for Brazil's national system of civil defense, which has as its core the National Secretariat of Civil Defense, based on the Ministry for National Integration. This National Secretariat is underway of changing its name to Civil Protection, as to reflect a more comprehensive approach to disaster management. The principles of the national policy, along with the actions taken under its guidance, align the priorities of the Hyogo Framework. As for HFA1's priority, a solid institutional basis for disaster risk reduction that pushes it to become a national priority has been built through a strong dialogue among the several institutions related to disaster prevention and response, and between these government institutions and the civil society. The first National Conference on Civil Defense and Humanitarian Assistance, which took place last year, has comprised of several phases, which involved more than 1,000 municipalities and brought together more than 35,000 representatives from government, research institutions, organized civil society, and civil defense workers. Hitherto, several of the recommendations of the National Conference are being implemented with a vision of forming a Brazilian platform for disaster risk reduction. HFA's Priority 2 has been accomplished by Brazil through an array of institutions that collect, process, and channel data to a national center of risks of disaster management, which in turn provide warning and management, preventive and response actions. This year, the early warning segment of this system has been strengthened through new investments. Resources have also been allocated for the disaster risk mapping of the most vulnerable municipalities in the country. As for HFA's Priority 3, Brazil has put forth knowledge, innovation, and education to the service of a culture of safety and resilience. Partnerships among the National System of Civil Defense and universities have allowed for the creation of research institutes with a focus on disaster management. Besides, disaster risk awareness has reached the schools through specific programs targeting students. Coinciding with the fourth priority of HFE reduction, of fundamental risk factors, most of which are closely tied to development issues, Brazil has put in place a broad set of participatory, decentralized policies, such as the Zero Hunger Strategy. The issue of occupation at risk areas has been tackled through agrarian reform and mechanisms of access to better housing. HFE's priorities, preparedness at all levels, has been achieved locally through a permanent exchange between government and community groups, through nuclei of coordinations at the level of municipalities. The division of labor among the federal and the state sectors in the scope of the national system of civil defense, alongside a concerted action of health, food and shelter provision, has proved important for disaster prevention and response. We have come a long way since the World Conference on Disaster Reduction held in 2005 and the more recent sessions of the Global Platform. What has become clear to Brazil is that commitment at all levels of government is a must. There also needs to be a stronger participatory process for policy formulation and greater investment and sustainable solutions. Thank you very much, Margarita.